There's a moment, and I've seen it hundreds of times over the years in retirement planning conversations, where everything shifts. You've done the hard part. You've saved, been disciplined. You've dealt with market adversity over time. And then retirement gets close. And suddenly the market doesn't necessarily feel like a friend. It feels like a threat. It feels risky. And the closer you get to your retirement, you start to feel more and more uncertain about which direction the market's going to go. Every headline, every dip is personal now, because this is the money that you're going to use to live for the next 20, maybe 30 plus years of your life. And that's exactly where Earl found himself. So who is Earl? Earl was a government employee. Hopefully Earl is happily retired now, but he was a government employee who'd accumulated a nice amount of money in his TSP. And he went to a government class, and someone there, or whoever was teaching the class, pitched him a fixed indexed annuity. And Earl was just a little bit uneasy about the recommendation. And so what did he do? He called Dave.
I don't know much about fixed index annuity. I did a little bit of research, but I just want to hear it from you.
Okay. Well, basically what we're talking about is an indexed annuity that has a floor to it. It's not going to go below a certain return, probably 5% or 6% or something like that. And it's probably indexed. Typically, it'll be off of something like the S&P 500.
Right.
Indexed means it's
right out of the gate. I love what Earl does here. He has questions. He's not certain about the product that was being proposed to him. And so he's looking for guidance. He's looking for other people to weigh in. Unfortunately, here in this case, in my opinion, like Dave is not giving accurate information, because what he's specifically was pitched, if you will, was a fixed index annuity. And Dave comes out with the terminology, says it has a floor, and that is true, but the floor is not a stated rate of return, like he says, of 5 or 6%, or I'm not sure what number he gave here, but it doesn't have that. The floor for a fixed index annuity is actually 0, unless you put your money into the fixed interest option. But that's not what the initial framing was here.
Indexed means it's not fixed. Indexed means it follows an index. Okay. So, like, have you got your TSP in the C plan? Some of it?
Yeah.
Okay. So the C is an index.
Mm-hmm.
That's an index. So you have an indexed investment now. If you have money in the S plan, that is an index. It follows a small cap index. And so all you're doing is you find a group of stocks that the weighted average of those stocks represent an index. So an S&P 500 is an index, and so it follows that. The problem is not the index, or indexing. The problem is not the floor. The problem is that the annuity fees are double what you get with a mutual fund, and his commissions are 4x what he would get if he sold you the same mutual fund, same index, without it being in an annuity. And so this guy wants a commission. You need to run.
Okay, there were several things there in that brief clip, and that clip is publicly available on YouTube, so you can search it if you want to see the full context of that conversation. But, as a certified financial planner, as somebody who works in this space, one of the things that I feel is constantly missing is just objectivity. We all have our opinions, we all have our biases, and to some extent, that is one of the reasons why markets work, because different people have different preferences. We have different goals. We have different things that we ultimately are trying to accomplish with our money. And so not everybody is the same. But one of the things that I feel like we have to always do is look objectively and at least make sure we're getting our fact patterns correct. So initially, Earl was asking about this contract. He was pitched a annuity at a class. So first of all, as someone who does teach classes and also someone who is annuity friendly, I will tell you that there are lots of people who teach financial education or do financial classes and workshops as a way to market and grow their business. And so it's not uncommon for people who may be partnered with certain groups to come in and teach to also be practicing in some way, shape, or form. So the first thing I would tell anyone If you go to a class or you go somewhere and are being educated about a product or a strategy or about retirement, you should absolutely do some due diligence on those people who are teaching the class and find out what exactly their level of expertise is and what is their role. Are they truly like a nonprofit? Do they work in business? Do they work for a company? Do they work for themselves? What are their credentials? Do they hold themselves out to be a fiduciary and have a fiduciary standard of care? It's good to know who's teaching the class, because that will also help you understand the lens through which they are viewing the curriculum and how they may view potential solutions for you. Secondly, I would say when it comes to this video specifically, I already mentioned the fixed index part. Dave is partially correct here. Fixed index annuities typically have a kind of like a collar strategy. I would never classify them to be growth vehicles. I know some people try to make that comparison, and I just think that that's false. Yes, fixed index annuities can sometimes see really nice crediting potential if the indexes inside of the contract do well and we have good crediting strategies. However, I would never compare them with a growth portfolio. So I think right out of the gate, comparing it to a mutual fund that has, or as Dave likes to always say, a growth stock mutual fund, that comparison to me is not a valid comparison. It's comparing apples and oranges. These are designed to do two very different things. But a fixed index annuity, the point behind the contract is that, first of all, it is a principally protected contract, meaning the money that you put in that contract is not at risk in the market. So your downside effectively in a base contract would be zero. If you link it to an index and the index is negative year over year, you will not lose principal based on a downward market movement over the crediting period. That's the fundamental basis behind these types of contracts. Now, unlike a fixed annuity, we call them multi-year guaranteed annuities or MIGAs. Those function like a CD where they have a stated rate of interest. And I think that's what Dave started out with, is it has a floor, and he started to give this interest rate that you could earn no matter what. Listen, if you could earn a guaranteed, a contractually guaranteed 5 to 6%, on safe money, that is still worthy of consideration no matter what you're doing. You want to, make sure you do your due diligence, but that's nothing to sneeze at. Okay. So that part is incorrect. Unless you put the money into the fixed interest option where it would give you a stated rate of interest for the crediting term. So, there are some contracts out there that'll give you, 3.5% or 4% for 1 year, and the next year it renews and you have to see what your new renewal rate is. That's one of the ways that the insurance companies themselves manage interest rate risk, right? If interest rates were to fall, during your contract period, they can't continue to pay a stated rate of interest way above what markets are paying. The same thing happens with banks and with credit unions when you have CDs. If you got a CD that's paying 6% and interest rates fall, most likely that renewal is not going to stay at 6% once the term is over. The next thing you should think about, especially when it comes to the fixed index annuity contract specifically, Dave in here goes right to the heart. In my view, he goes right to the heart of his biases, which he says it talks about the fees. Well, most of these contracts, the base contract has no fee. So this idea that there's all these I believe he said double fees. Well, if your fee is zero, it's not double of anything. Most of the base contracts for fixed and fixed index annuities have no internal fees. Now, there could be some interesting things that happens with the crediting strategies where there are caps and spreads and participation rates, and there may be some fees in there. These are all contract specific and way beyond the context or the scope of this video. But you want to know what you're buying, first of all. But the idea that you're buying an annuity so you automatically have a fee is simply, in my view, it's false. The last thing he talks about is commissions. And this is really getting to, in my view, the heart of the issue. And this is, in my view, the heart of the issue that most people in financial spaces and in financial industry, financial professionals have with insurance products, and more specifically for this video, annuities, is insurance by and large mostly still compensates people through commission structures, which means if you write a contract with that person gets paid a commission from the insurance company. And so there is this idea that, well, because you get a commission, you're somehow unscrupulous or you're not doing the right thing for clients. And I just fundamentally reject that, because every financial professional that I have ever met that's running a business gets paid somehow. What you as the client should really be concerned with is, does this person, one, do they understand my situation? Are they equipped with the level of expertise and care that I need? And then three, like, does the compensation structure work for me? Some people don't have any issues with a good financial advisor making a commission or, having a commission paid to them because the product and the strategies work for what they're trying to accomplish. There are other people who would rather roll over hot coals before ever having someone make a commission in working with them. Like I said at the top of the video, we're all different. The key idea that I think everyone should think about, especially when you are looking at products like this, is you should evaluate the product based on what you want to accomplish, not the headlines, not what your neighbor or your coworker said about an annuity or any other product or strategy, but like, how does it work for you? Will it accomplish what you're wanting to accomplish? And if you made it this long, I'm going to give you a very specific example for how you could think about this. There are a lot of workers, not many, but there are still a fair amount of workers out there that have a pension plan that was frozen, or they've worked and they have a pension available to them that's going to pay them a certain amount of money each and every month once they retire. Well, guess what? That pension is an annuity, because that's the definition of annuity, stream of payments. Many people, when you have a pension, one of the things that you can do is you can evaluate what are the monthly payments and the structures of these payments that I can receive if I elect to keep the pension with the pension company or the company that's going to pay it, or can I take the lump sum benefit and do better on my own? Now, there are lots of advisors that may say, yes, take the pension lump sum and let's put that into a diversified portfolio. Let's make a systematic withdrawal plan where we can escalate those payments for inflation over time and the probabilities, yada, yada, yada. There are a lot of people who subscribe to that. However, there are also the potentials for you to take that lump sum and look at buying an annuity for yourself, a private annuity that you yourself pick and select based on the annuity structure and the payout ratios. And you might find that you could actually do better on a contractual basis by taking that lump sum and moving it out of the pension plan and into an annuity that will pay you those payments for life. So that is a real life planning strategy that works in many cases, more often than not. But you want to understand there are lots of other things that make that strategy worth considering. But let's not just dismiss something because somebody said the A word and that a financial guru said that that's bad, or somebody wrote in the press that annuities are bad. Because understand, the vast majority of people out there that talk about annuities never clarify what they're specifically saying. They're being very general. They don't specify exactly what they don't like. It's just mostly that there's fees and commissions and all the bad things, and that's all you need to know. Well, in my view, it's much deeper than that, and you deserve the opportunity to explore that for yourself. If you made it this far, thank you for watching. And if you found this to be helpful, go ahead and give us a like. And hey, and if you got a comment or you disagree or you agree, let me know in the comment section. I'd love to read them. Thanks.